Hello and welcome to Queer Legends and Oral History Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dern, and this episode is about something kind of special. We're talking about Pride, and not just the huge corporate-sponsored kind full of drag race superstars that draw hundreds of thousands of people. This is about the magic and empowerment of small-town Pride, the kind of celebrations that happen in communities of 10,000 people or less. You're going to hear from Pride organizers from Fogo Island, Newfoundland and Labrador, La Ronge, Saskatchewan, Nelson, British Columbia, and we're going to start in Iqaluit, Nunavut.
My name is Bibi Bilodeau, and I wear many different hats and do many different things. And I came up to Iqaluit 8 years ago for a visit, and 8 years later, it's become my home, which is kind of like the person that I am. I never plan anything, and it just, whatever needs to be done, I'll do it, which is how I got into both being a comedian, a rural pride organizer in Nunavut, and also I run a autistic social media awareness project called Aspergirl, and I also work with autistic adults and children to improve their lives and advocate for neurodiversity.
Hi, my name's Jake Decker. I'm from Fogo Island, Newfoundland, born and raised, and I've been a member of the Fogo Island Pride Committee since its inception now 3 years ago.
From Fogo Island to northern Saskatchewan, and Pride organizer turned mayor of La Ronge, Saskatchewan, Colin Ratushniak.
When you're in a bigger urban center, you're sort of a small fish in a big pond, right? And the work may be just as significant, but when you come to a small town where you're unapologetically you and you march to the beat of your own drum, and I'm A-type personality, I'm an entertainer, I'm openly gay, right? I just did not care. And I was warned a little bit about that. It was like, you need to be careful. You don't know what, and I was just like, I'm not going back into the closet. There is absolutely no way that I'm about to do that. So what I just decided is that I was just really going to get invested in the community and do as much as I possibly could, from sports and recreation to volunteerism, and then that's what sort of led into falling into the Pride Committee, which was already started before I got here, but it was a very small group of people. It was ran by a straight ally, and I think some people that were more closeted at the time, but the fact that it was already here was amazing.
Well, my name's Erica Scott, but a lot of people around here know me as Tika, my nickname Tika. Yeah, I came to Nelson in 1990 because I heard it was a rural place where I could be out and be myself and not have to worry about it. And I was really, really tired of being in Vancouver, but I was afraid to move to a small town and face a lot of homophobia or just, redneckery. And so, yeah, I was really happy to learn about Nelson. And actually where I first landed was in the valley, a tree planter at the time. And it was really wonderful. It was really wonderful to come here and find a queer community. I was lucky enough that I was kind of linked into it before I even got here. So when I arrived,
that's
I already
definitely
had
handy. That's definitely handy.
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't have to look for the secret whisper network or anything like that.
That secret whisper network is what I used to find the queer community when I moved from Montreal's huge gay community to the Kootenays in 1995 for my very first radio job. That whisper network also landed me on the board of a group called the West Kootenay Gays and Lesbians Association. That's also how I met Tika for the very first time, and until this episode, we hadn't spoken in over 26 years. But to get started, I asked all my guests to talk about life in their tiny towns.
Iqaluit and Nunavut in general, it's really, for lack of a better word, it's breathtaking, and it does feel not like you're on another planet, but it just sort of captures you in a way that you feel like you're completely in a different space with its own powerful energy. So it's a small town in that we only have 8,000 people in Iqaluit, and it's fly-in only. So we have about 9 kilometers of road, and that's it. And the rest is we're in nature. We're surrounded by mountains, and ice and snow most of the year. In the summer, we have ocean that we can kayak on. So it's the complete opposite of a life in, say, a city or even in southern Canada, where here we are, nature governs our lives. So it's just and it's quite extreme, from the temperature to like the all night sun, all night darkness in the wintertime. So we have no choice but to work together. So it's a very tight knit community, but also there's a lot of drama and stories. So it's a very vibrant place, and it almost feels sometimes like I live in Springfield or a cartoon in some ways, because everything is a bit more amplified.
So I'm from the community of Joe Betts Arm. Fogo Island has 11 communities on the island spread out. I don't want to say barren because that sounds very harsh, but it's there's not a whole lot here. I think the whole population of the island is about 2,500, give or take a couple hundred. Lots of grass and rocks, of course, and pretty much everywhere you look, there's a view of the ocean.
So it's little fishing villages and brightly painted little houses right on the water? That's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the road through the community, the only road, follows along the coastline of the water and everything, and then people put their houses in wherever they can fit.
Well, right now we're buried in snow. They just closed the highways again for the second time this week. I'm really glad I shoveled my roof off yesterday, because we're now like upwards of 3 feet of snow on the roofs, and it's supposed to rain tomorrow. But what does it look like? It's a beautiful little village in the mountains on a lake, and a lot of heritage buildings. It was originally a mining town, and so there are a lot of like small skinny houses, and it's known for being an artsy little town. There's a college here, and there's an arts college.
When we sort of look at me stepping into the role as being with the committee, at that time the mayor and council refused and declined to have the pride flag raised, and that's where I think the story begins of me being here. And that was really, I got here in April of 2019, and Pride Month was obviously June of that year, and I just said, oh hell no. This is not happening on my watch. And because I grew up in the small town, I understood not necessarily, there was no pop culture with gay characters or just anyone to really relate to or understand what you were feeling, right? So I just was not going to have any of that. And my goal and role now is, if I can save or even just help one youth or adult or anybody of any age be okay with that, or at least offers them the support that they need to be their authentic self, and that's what I'm going to do.
I used to work for a nonprofit called Skills Canada Nunavut. So I was working in the high school. I'm not a teacher, but I was doing like trades and technology promotion, and the guidance counselor approached me about getting involved in this little after school club called Positive Space, which was just about like youth leadership and building spirit and doing assemblies and that sort of stuff. And they wanted to do a pride or anti-homophobic bullying, and because I was the only openly gay faculty, the guidance counselor Tess Thurber kept coming to me for questions and stuff. And then I realized how many students in the school, once I became visible, were also queer, or at least wanted to know more information about it. So that's how I got involved with Positive Space, just the club. I just loved it and realized there is a real need. So then over the last 5 years, Tess and I built it up, and then just last year I got it registered as a full-on society, and now we got a grant from the federal government to build what we're doing, not just in Iqaluit, but across Nunavut, and get it in this sort of model in other schools as well.
What is it like being queer in your community?
It really depends on your culture and background. I'm white, and I'm an outsider in that I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Toronto. So while in general, because of the legacy of colonization and the influence the Catholic Church has had and the disruption of families due to forced relocation, there are no like queer spaces, and in general, it isn't acceptable to be openly gay. But because of just my privilege of not being from here and not having like close family ties, in the fact that like if I, because I'm so open, and if people don't like me, then I'm not related to them, so it's less social pressure for me.
I'll say I had a very good experience with it. I had a very supportive family, and I never faced a whole lot of homophobia with it. Of course, you get your jerks and your assholes and people like that, but you'll find those people anywhere. I think my thing was I came out when I was in the summer going into 8th or ninth grade. I can't quite remember. But because it was such a small community, and like it's a K to 12 school, I'd been with my class since kindergarten, and I was already kind of known as like the weird kid. It was just like, oh, okay, whatever. So yeah, I never really faced much crap from anyone. Other people, I don't really know. I can't speak to their experiences, and there definitely is a phenomenon of just older people who have never come out their entire lives.
What about Nelson? Okay, not just Nelson, Trail, Castlegar, Nelson, that whole area. What's it like being queer in the Kootenays?
I mean, I'm sure it's different for everyone, and there's all different kinds of queer too. But for me, it's just been a place where I can feel more comfortable being out, being myself in a rural setting. But having said that, it's not, for quite a while I worked for Fortis, and I didn't really feel comfortable being out at Fortis.
What's Fortis again? I'm sorry, I forget what Fortis is.
Oh, Fortis, yeah, it's an energy company. I'm an electrician, and it used to be, and that's a whole part of my experience here. So yeah, I felt it was really, really difficult in this area being just a female electrician. So to come out felt like a lot more than would be comfortable. So it's not really.
How long ago did you do that?
The last time I worked for Fortis was maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
So you were a bit of a trailblazer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was difficult for women to get into the trade here. There were people blocking the way, like deliberately. And when I got into it, I was one of the first ones in the union hall here.
I mean, for me, I think I have a sort of a different experience, right? Because I'm a white cisgender male, and I do supply a lot of activities for the communities, in the sense that like I'm the head coach of the skating club. I run the fitness and programming at another facility with the Lac La Ronde Indian Band. So I'm connected through the communities there. I volunteer at different places, but there are other stories that I hear of, right? And this is so typical of small towns that it's those slurs of being called a fag, or just you hear the things that, I mean, kids are brutal. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, but kids are brutal, and I think that it just is going to take a little bit more leadership and a little bit more mentorship to try to change that. I mean, we now have GSA clubs happening in our elementary school. We have our GSA happening in the high schools. The one in the high school was already here before I got here, but we started the one in the elementary school. I mean, we have openly trans kids in the elementary school. We have gay, queer, non-binary. Like, we have such a variety, which is so awesome to see. Because I mean, I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but there was absolutely no way that I was coming out in high school, nor did I really even know truly what it was.
Growing up through high school and everything, I was really involved with mental health advocacy and things of that nature. I was always the one like going to the conferences and the GSA conferences and things like that. The ball finally got rolling. I was actually in Chester's with my family, and Chester's is like a Greasy Spoon little restaurant we have here, and he was also there with a couple of people. They were doing stuff for grad, and he come over and floated the idea past me and said, "Hey, we're having a general meeting for Pride. A couple for getting a Pride committee on the go. Come and we'll go from there." So I showed up, and it was just kind of a general meeting, and whoever wanted to be there was there. I'd say it was about 15 or 20 of us, and then we selected the committee from the 15 or 20 people that were there.
Were you surprised by the number of people who showed up to that meeting? I mean, it seems like a lot for a rural Pride meeting.
I was and I wasn't, because I do think, for being such an outport, isolated place, we do have a lot of very open-minded people.
How important is that, or was that, to getting your Pride off the ground?
I think it was really important. And you also have to think too, because Fogo Island, I think, is such a tourism hotspot with the inn and everything like that. I think we really need to make an effort to make sure this place feels, inclusive and accepting to all. And because it is broadcast as, Fogo Islanders are like the nicest people out there, and like, can't just be nice to the straight people. You gotta be nice to everyone.
I joined the Pride planning committee, and I come to find out that the previous year that the Pride flag raising had been struck down with an opposed vote of 6-1. And I just was like, I'm like, what year is this? Like, what? Like, I'm just like, how is this happening? So I put out a call to action, and I put in a request to have the flag raised again, and the person who sort of started all the Pride movement here was actually on council. So he was the one who was at the time was the person that was wanting it to be raised and was in favor. And he was in a council with 6 other businessmen, white, privileged, just different thinking. And so put a call to action, and surprisingly, like this is where like I saw the community, that there was a different side to the community, or sort of like the introduction to what the community was going to be, because I was still sort of fitting into what it was going to be. And we even had like a local drag queen in the town, which I hadn't even known, right? And so we had, I think there were 65 people that showed up, of all genders, of all sexualities. Like, it was mostly straight allies to the community, which was really awesome. And we packed that chamber. It's not a very big chamber, as you can imagine, in a small town. And we gave the reasons why it's important to fly the flag, why we're doing what we're doing. And I can proudly say that they flipped it around, and it probably because they had no choice, because there would have been an uproar. And I can tell you, I would have been climbing a pole. I would have been climbing that flagpole myself to raise it if that was the case. But it was a 6-1 in approval, so it just completely flipped.
How did it go from 6-1 opposing, and then all of a sudden 6-1 in favor?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it was the public pressure, which sometimes is required, because I think a lot of politicians, it's saving face. Let's be honest, right? But the fact that there was even one that was opposed, I still felt that there was more work to be done.
Do you have a prideful sort of goal as mayor?
Probably not specifically as mayor, because again, I think being a local politician really is about like garbage pickup and water and sewer. Like, it's not sexy at all. Where when it comes to being on the being on the Pride planning committee, right? Like, we get to look at the festival, and we get to invite drag queens to the community, and we get to have a parade, and we get like, you want to talk about that creative energy just exploding, and what I want to be able to offer to the town. Like, that's where I get to flourish, and that's what's exciting for me. Doing policy and everything on the mayor's side is not that exciting.
I do feel, though, and I've been told this by the youth that I work with who are queer, that because I have this privilege and because I have less at stake, that's why I got into the work that I do, because there are people suffering in silence, and LGBTQ folks up here are the most marginalized of Inuit. So that's why, for me, it's still a risk. But
do you mean a risk for your safety?
yeah, for like both safety and also and socially, because there's only 40,000 people in all of Nunavut. We have a very small workforce, and who you know and how you're perceived has a huge impact. So, if you make a bad impression on the wrong person, it can have a huge impact on, how you are treated in like professionally, how you get jobs, so for me, that's why a lot of the work that I do, although I'm like a performer, education and creating safe spaces and care for youth and providing like food and just like Nunavut in general, food insecurity is a huge problem. So I try to include like food, safe gatherings, mental health support, and any sort of thing that I do. That way, if people disapprove of the LGBTQ factor in it, at least I have respect of people who may not support my identity, of just that I'm providing a service that is needed.
Originally, we just started out with like our Pride Week, and ours is in August usually. But as the years have went on, we want to do more and show that we're here for the community. Fogo Island Pride started a food security program when COVID struck. That originally started out as us. We identified about 20 families in need on the island. Every month we would go do grocery runs for them, and then that's evolved now into like a food bank program.
So this is a food program that's come out of Pride, but it's not just for the queer families in your community. It's for anyone who's in need in your community, right?
Exactly. And the queer population on Fogo Island is very small. I imagine you could probably count it on two hands, the number of out individuals, and I'd say half of them are already on the Pride organization.
You said your first meeting had more than 20 people, so you've got more than just the queers of Fogo Island, right?
Oh, I think allyship, is the majority of our members and like our supporters and things like that.
That's pretty amazing. How do you feel?
I mean, it makes me feel really good because we do need allies.
This is the thing where I don't know if you really want to talk to me because I'm kind of an outcast in the queer community right now.
Then you're just the person I want to talk to because you'll give me the straight goods. Because don't forget, I was part of the queer community, the leadership back in the day. And, the WKGL was doing all the events and I was going and cleaning up and lifting heavy things and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. And then I left and I don't know what happened, but then Nelson Pride erupted. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Nelson Pride was amazing for many years. And we also had this thing called Sappho Says that was really a lot of fun. That was like a lesbian event that was really big for a few years, where we had a bunch of entertainment, and that was really fun. And actually, I emceed for that a few times. And there was controversy the one year when I had a spanking booth at the event. And it was because I was approached and asked to have a kissing booth. And I was like, kissing everybody? Ew, no, but I'll spank people. So
how important are those events to the community of the whole LGBTQ two-spirit, all that gang?
They were really important. And I think people still talk about them and still have fond memories, but like the Sappho Says hasn't happened for a long time. And the Pride Parade still happens, but every year it's kind of this thing of like, is it going to keep happening? Because nobody wants to do the work to organize it. And a few people take on the work and then they get burnt out.
In the past, there used to be these Friends of Pride family picnic, which is basically at the national park, which is near, or territorial park, which is near town. Every summer, queer people would just give out free hot dogs and have family barbecue and picnic. And it was like a small, subtle way to bring out people in support, or those who couldn't come out to at least come and see who was out and where they could be safe. So we've always wanted to do those sorts of things again. For me, like what I've been doing also at the high school, we have these, Pride Prom, Pride Weeks with the youth, which is a mixture of, like education, awareness, games, and also, having dances, having people dress up, having a drag. We always bring up a drag queen to do a drag makeup and drag workshop with the students.
Our first Pride Week, we had like a community bonfire. We had a drag show. trying to remember what else we done. We done like a karaoke night down at one of the local cafes.
I'm looking at a photo online, and it looks like a bunch of folks at a flag raising or something at an arena.
Yeah, that was the kickoff event. I guess you could say we raised the gay pride flag and the trans pride flag. Which, to have that stuff flying on Fogo Island, like thinking back, when I first come out, I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm the only kind of out person on the island. It is what it is, can't. But, to see that, I was like, wow, that's like progress right there. That's pretty cool. Like I said, we want to get events that, people could come out and get engaged with and kind of interact and, just kind of show that gay people and queer people aren't big, scary things. We're kind of people too.
You have a lot of people at this Pride. And considering you said that there's only enough of you to count on two hands, that's a lot of people there.
Oh, yeah. The turnouts for all the events were, every time we were like, this is amazing. It was, and in fact, so we ended it off with a Pride March. And what so our Pride Week fell in between the weeks of the two big festivals on the island, the Etheridge's Point Folk Festival, and then the Brimstone Head Folk Festival. So to start, the Brimstone Head Festival starts off with a parade through the town of Fogo. And so we were like, okay, instead of us shutting down the road ourselves, we'll just kind of link up with their parade. Like, you can have your own, their motorcade. And we ran past them and everything. And they were like, oh yeah, totally 100% more the merrier. The people who came out and marched in support of Pride and with the Pride group, we'll say, were more than I think were in the entirety of the rest of the parade, which was amazing.
I asked Tika if Nelson is still as gay positive as it used to be.
Yes and no. That's a really good question. I mean, I think officially it is, but yeah, having a trans kid here now, I would say like it's not as great as people think it is.
Why do you say that? What do they face?
Well, it's just, there's more discrimination than people would like to think. Like it's the kind of place where people are so sure that they're woke that they're not trying to learn anything. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Until recently, my husband and I were living in Montreal's gay village, and the police presence there is unbelievable. And not only is it violent and aggressive towards our community, it's kind of like ongoing bullying.
Yeah.
But I digress. So what's happening in Nelson?
Here's the thing: is like, so right now too, we also have a complaint we're starting a human rights complaint against the police as well. And we're going public, but there's several trans people in town who've had really bad experiences with the police who don't feel comfortable to come forward and say anything.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not so surprising. It's the police, right? But then, most of the town is like, oh, no, but our police are great in this town. You know what I mean? Like it's, we also had this really shameful episode where the older white women who started the women's center tried to like ban trans women from the women's center. So that was really disappointing, and it ended up being like a whole civil war.
What has been the community's reaction to Pride in your town?
Really good. We, again, when you think back to 2 years ago when I first moved here, right? You're not sure what you're getting yourself into. But what I will say is, we have this initiative where we go to every single business within the tri communities, because we're a tri community. We're Larange, Aront, and the Lac Larange Indian Band, so we're unique in that sense. We went to every single business with a printed pride flag, paper saying what it means, and if you would be interested in putting it in your window for display, and then also if you're interested in donating to the festival so we can make it bigger and brighter every year. And I will say 99% of the businesses said absolutely. Like there was no pushback.
Do you have any advice for young queerdos out there, whether they're on Fogo Island or anywhere else for that matter?
I think the biggest thing is just having thick skin and knowing if you are, it's so cliche, if you are the only like queer person in your small town, there's other queer people out there. You will find them.
There are gay people everywhere, and statistically, at least 10% of us. If you're living in a small community, even if you don't see any representation, people are there. Your people are there. Unfortunately, they might be hiding or not realizing it. And it is, if you're that person who is out or thinking about coming out, if you take that risk, others will follow. It will, I hate this term, but it does get better. And it just takes sort of one person, one trailblazer, one pathfinder to, create that space.
If you're a young person who's not quite ready to be a trailblazer yet and you need some support right now, please know you're not alone. Go to kidshelpphone.ca, and if you're ever in a crisis at any time, text the word HOME to 686868, and you can start chatting with a real person right away. Thank you for listening. This episode of Queer Legends and Oral History Podcast was researched, written, recorded, and produced by me, Sean Dern. The executive producer is Ian Capstick. Queer Legends and Oral History Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and wherever you go for great storytelling.